Welcome to episode 8 of my new podcast, Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? With my guests, we are discussing health issues, questions you may have about your health, and debunking some of the many myths around our health. And it's a real pleasure today to talk to one of my heroes, Dr. Heather Massey, a dip into nature, swimming outdoors. Heather is a senior lecturer with the School of Sport, Health and Exercise Science. She has been a member of the Extreme Environments Laboratory since 2007, where she completed a PhD in the area of environmental cross-adaptation in humans. Prior to that, she worked at the Institute of Naval Medicine within the Environmental Medicine Unit for 6 years. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Not sure about being called a hero, though.
Oh, you are definitely. Now I'm going to explain why. So I think probably my listeners know that I'm an avid cold water swimmer. But before I started, I did a lot of reading and listening to webinars and podcasts about the topic because I know it's dangerous and I wanted to really be prepared. And also I was one of the stupid people that started in December when the water is incredibly cold. And when I was doing all my searches, what did I come up with? I came up with Heather's webinars and I listened to many of them. And you gave such brilliant advice. And a few years ago, we did a webinar about cold water swimming together for International Women's Day. And you can hear that podcast on my YouTube channel. So, Heather, I wanted to hear about your journey with cold water swimming and how it all started for you.
Well, really, I have my dad to thank for my journey into cold water swimming. He was an avid dinghy sailor when myself and my brother were much younger. And to be honest, we enjoyed being in the water more than we enjoyed being on the boat. He only had a little laser boat and it was a bit cramped when there's 3 of us in the boat. So my brother and I preferred diving off into the water and just enjoying the summer water temperatures there. And from there, I've just really carried it on, having a bit of a misspent youth in and around water. Obviously, as a teenager, you get a bit more sensitive about your body image, and swimming took a bit of a backseat for me, whereas sort of team sports became a bit more popular. And then towards the time where I was becoming older, more injured, I was spending much more time in the water again, rehabbing, and just thought, well, why not get back into swimming rather than spending all the time on the bench injured? I could be back swimming and enjoying it again. So, yeah, my dad ultimately, and then moving on into different sports, and then re-engaging with the love of swimming as an adult.
What were the main sports that you did when you were younger that you don't do now?
Oh, gosh, I used to play hockey, rugby, football, anything that was in a team, I used to play. I kind of fell out of love a little bit with swimming when I was younger because I was very team orientated, and swimming can be quite an individual activity, or was then. And I just really enjoyed the team ethos. So anything that involved getting muddy, dirty. I was a real tomboy as a teenager. So I just really thoroughly enjoyed nothing more than just coming home clorped in mud.
I was the same. I was an avid hockey player, and I remember the old boots we used to have. You're younger than me, so we used to have these cloth boots that used to just get really smelly and muddy and dirty. And I love the team sports, and I love that so many women now are revisiting team sports later in life, and men. So we've got walking football, we've got lots of adult netball teams, and I think that team sports is great. That's why I wanted to ask you a little bit more. I think it's good to revisit that maybe as we get older.
Absolutely, and I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've got friends now that play walking netball, walking football, and they're thoroughly enjoying it. So I wholly advocate just being active. Just because you're slightly older, maybe just not being in the same sort of teams that you used to be, but you've still got the skills that you had. Maybe not necessarily the pace. So yeah, keep going with whatever exercise and activity really interests you.
And even if you weren't a really competitive person at school, lots of people said they didn't do sports when they were younger because they were so competitive. But I think these adult teams, it's all just about having a great time, getting off the sofa, getting out with friends and a community, and that team spirit. I think it's a win-win. So yeah, that's our first message to everyone. You know, have a look at some of the adult team sports that are going on in your area. Now, I love.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Sorry, I love the name of your lab, Extreme Environments Laboratory, and you do research into human exposure to heat, cold, and altitude, and how we prepare and mitigate the effects of these environments. And how do you feel these environments may have a benefit to health and well-being?
Well, like with exercise, when we exercise, we are putting ourselves and our physiology a little bit out of its comfort zone, and we adapt as a consequence of that. So we become fitter, healthier, we become more able to adapt to different circumstances because we're doing those exercises. It's also the same with extreme environments. By putting ourselves in a hot environment, a cold environment, a low oxygen, altitude environment, our body has to adapt a little bit in order to function optimally in that environment. And so it's really about making sure our body is as adaptable as it possibly can be, whether that stimulus is through exercise or through exposure to different environments, the heat, the cold, altitude. So that's what we're all about.
Yeah, and it is quite amazing. So I've done sports my whole life, and I think we get older at the same time as doing more sports. So we never seem to get better. If anything, we get slower and can't jump around quite so much. But with the cold water swimming, what made me feel incredibly accomplished was realizing how my body was adapting. And each year I've done it, I'm wearing less and less. I'm still wearing, at the moment in winter, I'm still wearing gloves and socks, but I only put them on in December, and I'm going to take them off very soon. The year before I was wearing a rash top as well. So that adaptation that my body over several years has done, and now being able to swim in a frozen lake, and you know, the increasing the amount of time that you can stay in, I think to be able to achieve that when you're older and see that your body has become stronger and has adapted, that is one of the many, many things I like about cold water swimming.
Yeah, and that's a story we hear from lots of different people, that you very rightly, are taking it easy. You're not pushing it too much. You said you've gradually reduced the amount of clothing that you're wearing. I would still stick to wearing the boots and socks. They're going to keep your fingers in good nick for much longer and prevent any possibility of non-freezing cold injuries as well. But it's not something that we need to rush into doing. You don't need to, go from being a pool swimmer to swimming ice miles in the period of 2 to 3 weeks or a month or a year. These are something that is built up really gradually. And so for any new person wanting to come and join the outdoor swimming community, really recommend we start in the summer when the water's warmest, and then gradually just see how you fare. It's one of those things, it's very individual, it's a very acquired taste. And some people like to have a break over the cooler months and then re-engage with the activity in the spring, summer. Other people are looking to go all the year through, but it's really an activity that we want people want to enjoy. It's something that we don't want to push people into doing. Different people are different shapes and sizes. They have slightly different responses to going into the cold, how much their cold shock response affects them, how quickly they cool. So it's really important that people are aware that one person's response is not necessarily another's. So yeah, we shouldn't use one person's example of swimming ridiculously long times in very cold water and expect everybody to be doing that.
So my son, who's very lean, wanted to come with me last week. So I did take him, and he lasted for less than a minute. He's just got no fat on him, which really doesn't help. But he saw me then go and swim for about 15 minutes, and it really did motivate him. But I think it's so important what you've said. This is very individual, and lots of people who hear me talk, I normally, whenever I give a talk, mention that I'm a cold water swimmer. And so many, especially women, really want to join. And whenever we're swimming in a river, we see women walking along and we see their faces and they're looking at us, and they normally are asking, oh, is it cold? And what do I need to do? And I think it is something that really attracts women for various reasons. But as you said, it's individual. We need to swim our own swim. I'm sometimes the first one to get out. We've got people that are very strong swimmers. I'm not a really strong swimmer. They'll swim much further than me. And in our groups that we go with, there may be people in wetsuits, there may be people without socks and gloves, and everything goes. And I really don't feel that the community judges anybody. Hopefully no one you swim with would judge you. And we need to all do what's right for us. And you've already given some really good safety advice. Is there anything else you'd recommend for anyone who's thinking of starting this?
Yeah, Joyce, in terms of people that want to start open water swimming, I think some of the best advice I can give is make sure that you are well fit and healthy. So if you've had any sort of problems, definitely worth contacting your GP just to check that you're okay. Cold water swimming is an extreme activity like jumping out of a plane or rock climbing. We are at the mercy of physics and of physiology. So it's massively stimulating activity, but it can be quite dangerous. So what we need to do is ensure that we are as fit and as healthy as we can be. Join a group of people that are regular swimmers that have a good experience, or join a coached group, because the coach will be able to provide information about the local environment that you're going into, the local risks, and also give you more information about what's going to happen to you when you go into the cold water. So do your homework, check that you're okay, and also find a group to go swimming with.
That's brilliant advice. And people ask me, why am I doing it? Why would I go and get in an ice lake in the midst of winter? I know why I do it, but you've done research on this. So what do you feel are the health benefits of cold water swimming?
Well, at the moment, we've done quite a bit of research that has looked at people's perceptions of health and what they the reasons why they go swimming. And lots of the reasons that people start swimming are not necessarily related to the health, although that's becoming more apparent now. But when we undertook the research, many more people were interested in maybe training for a triathlon or a small swim, and wanted to take part and try and achieve their goal. But we're finding that it had sort of the side effect of they felt better, they had lighter mood, they felt that they were using it to recover from an injury, for instance, and that actually they just carried on swimming because they enjoyed it. So it became an activity that it had one purpose, but sort of morphed into having more than one purpose. So lots of people are making, there's lots of qualitative evidence around people's improved mood. Possibly some people have suggested that any symptoms of pain they had or migraine may be reduced, although migraine, the evidence is really sort of hit and miss. And other people are suggesting that there may be reductions in symptoms of menopause. And so there's lots of sort of blogs and anecdotal evidence and qualitative evidence out there. What we now need to do is start to solidify that in terms of the more robust research studies in order to find out, well, is it just one person that benefits, or are there more people? And how do they benefit? What's causing this cold water immersion, cold water swimming, to allow these people to improve symptoms that people have had sometimes for quite a long time?
I definitely feel, again, anecdotally, but the smiles and the laughter when people are swimming. I've again, totally anecdotal, but the smiles when they're in a frozen or colder water definitely seem bigger to me. And for me, I started before lockdown, but lockdown was a time when we couldn't do lots of different sports, but we could go to a river or lake, ideally with one other person at one time, when we only could be with two people, and exercise and be out in nature, and have that friendship as well of someone who is also swimming. Is there any evidence about the release of endorphins? We always say, oh, it's making us smile, making us so happy. We're releasing lots of endorphins. Is there actually evidence for that?
That's a good question. And I think the evidence is really sort of more theoretical. We know that activities like exercise, like going into cold water, do release those endorphins, but we haven't tested it in these populations. So we're applying previous work to this situation rather than actually having solid tests that have actually studied this.
Amazing. And this is a theme that's come up in a lot of the podcasts that I've been doing, is that we haven't done enough research, especially around women's health. And yeah, we have a lot more studies to do for sure. And I'm really privileged. You and I are working in a research group looking at cold water swimming and reproductive health. And it's an absolute privilege to be with this group of researchers who are discussing this on a regular basis. And so last year, you and I and some others ran a survey to ask women if they felt cold water swimming helped their menstrual and menopause symptoms. And we are writing up this data now. And we found that they do feel that it helped their symptoms. What advice would you give women experiencing menstrual and menopause symptoms? Is this something that you would recommend to them to try?
Well, there's lots of things people experiencing symptoms of menopause and menstrual symptoms can try. Exercise is definitely one of them. It might seem a bit counterintuitive if you're in quite a lot of pain or something like that, that actually going and doing exercise might relieve that pain. But certainly outdoor swimming is one form of exercise that can be done. We're not going to suggest that it's suitable for everyone, and obviously some people will have access can't access locations to go swimming, but certainly exercise in most forms will help reduce symptoms of menstrual problems, and also some menopause symptoms as well.
For me, I wasn't cold water swimming when I went through the menopause, but I always tell everyone I exercised through the menopause. I always exercised a lot anyway, but I really upped my exercise. I started running. I hadn't really run before, and just tried to do more. So things like hot flushes, I was sweating all the time anyway. So a hot flush didn't really make much difference. But I know that some people feel that they're too uncomfortable to exercise. But, a brisk walk, getting outside, I think can really help. And our group's looking at pregnancy and cold water swimming. And it's something that is discussed a lot when women have been cold water swimming anyway, and then they get pregnant. We wanted to see if there were any research or any advice that we could, solid advice that we could give them about the safety or not of cold water swimming during pregnancy. And what would you say about that, about what we've found so far?
Well, I think from the work that we've done, so the initial work we've done, there are a lot of questions from pregnant women about the safety of swimming in cold water. Are they harming themselves and also their baby as well? And the advice they get from medical professionals is very generic. There's no real evidence or information out there for people that are currently cold water swimming that then become pregnant. And where there's a sort of a vacuum of information, many medics will just turn around and say, well, we don't have the information and therefore you shouldn't do it. But lots of people are starting to, maybe ignore that information that they get from the medics. And we just want to be able to provide some fact-based information to people that are pregnant and wanting to carry on at their open water swimming to keep themselves and their baby safe. So it's really about trying to provide information not only for pregnant women, but also for medical professionals that deal with pregnant women as well. So that's what we're really hoping to achieve from the work that we're doing.
One of the risks when pregnant, and even when not pregnant, is the pollution issue, which it seems that we're talking about it all the time. We're talking about the raw sewage going in our rivers and seas. We're talking about pollution from the land during rainy weather. But we talk about it, and Scotland seem to have sorted it out. But in England, I can't really see anything happening. I keep getting optimistic and then keep hearing more reports and feeling down about it. How do you feel about the pollution issue?
Well, I live on the south coast in a region supplied by Southern Water, which has regularly been in the press, and it's a constant thorn in our sides. Whenever there's heavy rain, as there has been for the last week, we can't swim, and we swim in coastal locations. And so, yeah, I really despair about the state of our and the water quality that we're swimming in. And it's a really, we have some amazing access to local waterways, but they're so heavily polluted, and I just don't think it's right for us as humans to be in there. Never mind the wildlife, the flora and fauna that may be affected by it as well. So I think something that outdoor swimming has really given me is not only a love for swimming and being in the water, but more respect for nature and allowing nature to flourish. And I feel that's something we are doing, is it impacting our natural environment. And that's something that quite a lot of open water swimmers share, is that their greater appreciation of what's around them.
I totally agree. All my exercise up until cold water swimming had mainly been done indoors or a jog around the village. But with the cold water swimming, just being so much more aware of our environment. And I totally agree. I definitely have switched on over the recent years and become much more aware. So that's a really positive thing, that the cold water swimmers are trying to make a stand against ruining our planet, which is just crazy. One way to dip and get over that problem would be to have lots of people are having an ice bath now in their garden. My son has just asked me to buy one. I don't think I'm going to sit in it, because a cold shower or sitting in my garden in something cold is not really on my list of what makes me happy. But being out by a river or a lake or the sea with some friends and, jumping around and smiling and laughing is on my list. So how do you think, what do you think about these ice baths in the water, in the garden, or cold water showers? Is that a benefit or is it just a fad?
Okay, so I'll deal with cold water showers to start with. Most cold water showers are from tap water fed, so the water temperatures don't get as cold as these new ice baths, these home ice baths can get. And so you're also covering less of the body with cold showers as well. So I have some people don't have access to cold water in any other form. So for them, they get some access to cold water through that cold water shower. And many people purport benefits to that effect. Now, I have a slight issue with the cold, but these new ice baths that people are having at home. And one of the main problems that is really misunderstood and little understood is the problem of non-freezing cold injuries. And this is something that's been traditionally studied in military environments, where people are exposed to extremely cold environments, and they develop problems with their extremities, so their fingers and toes in particular, and other extremities may be affected. And it can cause severe pain, and it can be really debilitating to experience these symptoms. We don't know enough about it. It's poorly diagnosed. And we don't know what dose of cold is required. But we do know that people have had non-freezing cold injuries from being immersed in 15-degree water. So being constantly or very frequently immersed in much colder water, so some of these ice baths will go as cold as 3 degrees regularly, then we don't know if people are going to be setting themselves up for coming up with these non-freezing cold injuries. So it's really important that people are aware that, if they are going to use these ice baths, which I would maybe better not to, that they're wearing at least neoprene gloves, neoprene socks, just to protect their extremities when they are immersing themselves. But I find, as you said, I find slightly warmer water than that. So normal seawater temperatures, river waters, lakes, etc., more welcoming because of that natural environment, because of the camaraderie you have from a community as well. It's also safer, you're with other people. Ice bathing at home, if you have a problem, you've no one to contact. So yeah, there's a number of issues I have with the use of home ice baths.
Thank you for that. I when we're swimming in the river, we're not still. We're swimming. And when we are staying still, that's when we get really cold, and it's not a nice feeling. So that, we are moving our bodies. But, you've just alerted me to the fact that if you're just sitting in this ice, they're quite narrow anyway. You're just sitting in these ice baths in the garden. My son does a lot of football, and the cold therapy to, help the muscles after a football match is something that I know lots of footballers do that. So would your advice be, if you did go in, don't sit in it for 10 minutes, just do a dip, short treatment for helping your muscles, and then get out?
In terms of the sort of using it as a recovery, I don't think it needs to be as cold as some of these ice baths will go. Normal cold water temperatures, so sitting in a bath of cold water from the tap would be absolutely fine. And there's research that's looked at the bath water temperatures of using normal cold water from the tap. I don't necessarily think you need to go to the extremes of 5 and 3 degrees in order to look at the potential benefits from recovery from exercise. So the sort of delayed onset muscle soreness, which people are trying to promote more rapid recovery by using ice baths. So I don't think they need to be ice cold, and certainly they don't need to be in there for extended periods of time. A couple of minutes really should all that be required.
That's really good advice. He lasted about 40 seconds in the lake last week. But
absolutely no problem. I've got no problem with that. He recognised it wasn't a comfortable environment for him to be in, so he did exactly the right thing. And there's absolutely no shame in that at all. And in fact, it's something I would promote.
Yeah, absolutely. I was the same. I said, you don't need to be in long. You've got any benefits, out you come. So now let's talk about some of your challenges. You've done some amazing challenges, and I look at this list and I am definitely envious. So you've done a solo crossing of the English Channel, and one of my first guests, Jessica Hepburn, who is not a swimmer at all, but she also did the Channel crossing, and she was trying to recover from years of fertility treatment and being childless. And she was the one actually that motivated me to start cold water swimming. But you've also done lots of other swim challenges, relay swims around Jersey and Jersey to France, around the Isle of Wight, as well as representing GB in the World Ice Swimming Championship 1K event in 2017. So tell us more about all of those. What was it like swimming the Channel? What was the Ice Swimming Championship like? Tell us more.
Well, having met Jessica, she's definitely a swimmer. Anybody is a swimmer. That's absolutely, if she says she's not a swimmer, then that's not true. She's a lovely lady, a great person and a great swimmer. So, yeah. I think I'm an accidental Channel swimmer because I didn't set out to swim the Channel. One of my friends that I swim with regularly booked the Channel swim for me. we'd done a number of relays together, and she had an attempt at swimming the channel, which I helped her sort of train for, and she booked it for me and then said, well, you need to go and pay for it and do it. So she's a PTI, by the way, an RAF PTI, so you don't say no. So yeah, she helped me train for it. We'd obviously done a lot of relays and stuff in the past, so I kind of just went and did it. And I just spoke to lots of people who had swum the channel, got lots of information from them, because there's no manual on how to swim the channel. So you just have to go and find lots of experts, people with experience, to find out a lot about it. And that's what I did. And then just plodded away over a couple of years and finally went for it. And we got down to Dover. Obviously, I live in Portsmouth, so not far away from Dover. And we got down to Dover. It was a really windy night. It was about 3:00 in the morning, and we were due to set off at 5. So I'll be very calm here and say I was somewhat nervous about getting into the water at that point. We got onto the boat, and it was sort of doing all sorts of strange moves in the tide and the wind. And we got out to where we were going to dump me on the beach at Sunfire Hoe. And the pilot said, no, we can't go. The weather's deteriorating further. And at that point, I was really relieved. So we went home and sat in home for 2 weeks while I bounced off the walls. And then we got the call again, and we went down, repeated exactly the same process. But this time, thankfully, the weather was calming down rather than building. So, it took me slightly longer than I'd have hoped. But I don't actually remember much of the swim. It just sort of, the 16 hours in the water sort of collapsed into possibly 2 or 3 memories that I have. I got stung by a couple of jellyfish, and I hit something quite hard in the water on my wrist, and so had quite a swollen hand for about 2 or 3 weeks after. I landed on Cap Greenay, which is quite a cliffy, rocky area. There were lots of seals around at the time, and so I literally had to climb up onto the rocks, wave at everybody, and then climb into the boat that was the little tender boat that had taken me right into the shore. So yeah, it was. I was there hoping I'd land on Wissant Beach and there'd be lots of people to wave me in, and I get, the champagne you get. No, none of that. It was a dull, misty day, landed on some rocks. No one else was around except for lots of seals, which they're huge, by the way. So yeah, very different from my sort of, all my imagery that I'd had in my head about it. But yeah, it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience, both training and also doing it, what I can remember. And yeah, I think I've always had sort of the imposter written across my head, and I still have with lots of things that I do. But that really made me realise that I can achieve, and hopefully people with ambitions should go for it. And it's all about attempting stuff. Whether you get there doesn't matter. It's all about the attempt that matters. And that really highlighted to me that, if something doesn't come off, it doesn't matter. The fact that you've given it a go is what really is important.
Thank you. That was amazing. It's an amazing story, and it will be very motivating to lots of people. And the ice swimming. Did you swim 1K where was it? And tell us a little bit about that.
So I got selected to. It was only the second time that they'd run an ice swimming championships, a world ice swimming championships. But I got selected to swim for GB. I'm not a quick swimmer, by the way. At that point, I was quite large and could withstand being in cold water for quite long periods of time. I'd trained myself with help from a couple of medics to do so. I got selected in my age group to go and swim in the World Championships. And that was on the Australian-German border in a very idyllic place. And they'd created, they have an outdoor swimming pool there, which is 25 metres length. And they basically keep it from freezing over by continually stirring the water. And there was about 6 or 7 of us that went. We swam a 1K in the water. It's the coldest swim I've ever done. And I did actually quite well. I think I came 4th in my age group, which the world championship was doing, 10 was doing something like 5 minutes quicker than me. But that didn't matter. The fact that I got in and did it was quite an achievement. It's really important when we're doing those sorts of events that people recognise, yes, they're very cold, and it is possibly a very stupid thing to do. We had a huge amount of medical support, rescue support around us. So we had people in big dry robes, big dry suits that had ropes around their waist, so that if we got into difficulty in the water, they got in, literally grab hold of us, and they were dragged out with the swimmer being held onto. We had medics, we had ambulances there, we had absolutely the works. So this is a very, very well-controlled environment in which to do something very extreme. And so this is why I sort of hesitate to say too much about it, because yes, it is an extreme activity, but we were very, very well supported. And this is what I want to try and get across with some of yes, I have been in very cold water, but with a huge amount of support to do so.
That's really important to know. I'm trying to think about joining a relay team for the channel, but I don't know. When I started thinking about it, I was like Jessica. Jessica wanted to do it breaststroke, but I've got better with my front crawl. But after September, I just couldn't put my head in the. I only swim front crawl in the lake, and I just couldn't put my head in. It was like putting my head in a freezer and ramming the door. It was just such pain. So I stopped immediately, and we're in March now, and I haven't put it in yet, but I'm put my head back in the water. But I think I'll try for April. So yeah, really good advice. Do not try these things at home for sure. It's such a lot of training, and having all that support there is really important. And you are trustee of Swim the Right, and you sit on the medical board of the Ectodermal Dysplasia Society. Can you tell us a bit more about these?
Yeah, so Swim the White is an Isle of Wight organisation that provides outdoor swimming for local people on the island, and also works with people with mobility issues to help them get into the water as well. So I just got involved because I know quite a lot of people locally, and they were just keen to have me involved. So in whatever capacity I could be. So that's sort of the Swim the White sort of connection. And the Ectodermal Dysplasia Society is a patient group for people living with ectodermal dysplasia, which is a rare genetic disorder, which means that people have altered sort of appearance in terms of few teeth, limited amount of hair, but also they have other hidden problems, like they're not able to sweat because they have few or functioning sweat glands. And I got involved because of the work we do in the extreme environments lab here at Portsmouth Uni, and we do a lot of work in the heat, and I'm just sort of passionate about trying to help people, and I see that we can do some help here. We can teach people about how to stay cooler, and how and when to do exercise. So there's lots of sort of practical support that we can provide people. We can't change their genes, but what we can do is help them with their activities of daily living and make that more appropriate. So whether that means getting involved with schools to make them more aware, don't get them to do PE in the middle of the day, try and get them to do it first thing in the morning. Do they need to wear a blazer in the middle of summer? Those sorts of things. It's really important that we can make a real difference by just some really practical things. And that's been sort of a slow burner for quite a few years.
That's fantastic. And have you heard people say the title of my podcast, why didn't anyone tell me this? And if so, what did they ask?
Lots of people sort of ask me particularly about cold water swimming. And the things that they want to know about are really about the non-freezing cold injuries that people are starting to tell me about, and also tips about cold water swimming as well. So one of the main things, well, there's several main things that I try and get across is that know how you're going to get out before you get in. It sounds daft, but especially if you've got an environment where it can be challenging to get out of the water, once you've got in the water and you're cooling, you're going to cool those muscles around the body, and it can be and it saps your strength as a consequence. So it can be a lot more challenging to get out of the water once you've got in. The second thing that people don't realise is that when you've been in cold water for a long period of time, you cool the deep body, and once you get out the water, that's not the end of your cooling journey. You're going to carry on cooling for possibly 20 or 30 minutes longer, and you'll be much colder than when you first got out of the water. So it's really important that you dry and dress really quickly to try to minimise that continued cooling. We also suggest that people don't drive straight away as soon as they've got out of the water, that they wait for those 20 to 30 minutes just to check that their cognitive function is going to be good enough for them to drive. As what we don't want is to see accidents or car accidents occurring because of the fact that people may have become slightly slower in their responses because they've been in the cold water and carried on cooling.
Yeah, that's such great advice. The only time I've had a really bad effect, it was much later. It was one full moon. I hadn't eaten. It was February. I'd stayed in too long, got carried away with looking at the moon, and was absolutely fine till I got home, and then got really, really cold. So those tips are really, really important for people. And what motivates you?
What motivates me? Now, what motivates me is seeing people enjoying themselves, doing things safely, and seeing people who have found benefit, whether that is from exercise, whether that's from outdoor swimming, whatever it is they're doing, just seeing people improve themselves because of the activities that they're doing.
Fantastic. And what makes you happy, and where is your happy place? I think it might have something to do with the water.
Maybe, yeah. What makes me feel happy? Floating. Actually, floating in water makes me happy. So at the end of every swim, I will just go and float.
That's amazing. Everyone said something that I didn't expect them to say, so it's really, really great. And what advice would you give your younger self about life, health, everything?
Oh, stick with swimming. Don't go into the team sports. Stick with swimming. I'd have been a much better swimmer if I'd have stayed in swimming as a teenager.
Yeah, that's always one. My kids have thought, should they have done this sport or that sport? And I think as we're older and we're wise, it's good to think about what we might have told ourselves when we were younger. So Heather, that has been, I've always learned something from you, and my main take home today is about I'll tell my son about, he's not sitting for 10 minutes in the cold water bath that he's going to have in the garden. Really full of really important tips. I know many people, and many women especially, are thinking of cold water swimming, and you've given them so much wonderful advice and really motivating information. So I just wanted to thank you very much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you. And good luck with the next, and good luck with all the podcasts that you're doing.
Thank you very much.